Welcome to Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. In this podcast, we delve into the non-clinical aspects of dentistry with inspirational guests from across the profession. You will hear incredible life stories, pick up valuable business tips and be entertained. I'm Andy Acton and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Drevens. How enjoyable speaking to Mark Topley today.
Yeah. Yet another fascinating story of how you go from being a teacher to what he is and those sort of journeys and steps in between. It's always fascinating, I think.
Yeah, and that how he's now purpose really matters. But for me, there's a real inextricable link back to his childhood and the adventures he talked about having when he was young with his parents.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of like, what's it? No can do attitude. No, it's not the right one. The one where you just like do anything you like. You know, just step out, see what happens.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, really fascinating.
Takes a lot, really. It's easy, as we said, it's easy to say. It's very hard to do.
Yeah. And that little treasure at the end, he was backing vocals on a top 10 single.
Yeah.
You have to listen to find out who that is.
What a great sort of one of those things. When you go to those meetings, isn't it? Tell me something about you that no one else knows.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
It was really cool.
It was brilliant. It was a good lad.
If you enjoyed this episode and you want to listen to more, please feel free to subscribe. We issue new episodes every week, 7 o'clock in the morning on Mondays. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
So, another podcast. Here we go yet again.
Here we are, Dentology podcast.
And we are...
Welcome every listener and viewer, anyone viewing, which is rare, but mainly looking.
And we are over the 100 mark. We have issued over more than 100 episodes of the Dentology podcast.
Scary,
quite remarkable.
isn't it?
Quite remarkable. And today we've got a guest joining us I'm very excited to talk to. It's Mark Topley, and Mark is the founder of Purpose Driven Business, a qualified educator and fellow of the Institute of Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability Professionals. That's a mouthful.
That's not easy to say, is it?
And UK dental industry leading authority on ESG and CSR, which we'll no doubt find out more about. Welcome, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thanks, mate. It's lovely to be here, and thanks for the invite.
No, not at all. I'm looking forward to it.
Lots of initials in there.
There are. Well, what I love that there aren't many people in your space, and I think there's lots of people that know they should be doing more, incorporate it to a point in their business. But it'd be really interesting to dig into what it actually is and how you go about, involving it in your business with your team, getting people on board with it. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. But to start with, let's kind of find out a little bit about where you come from. So in what ways did your parents set you up for the person you are today? What was childhood like?
This is where we lean in and sort of that.
Very thoughtful.
Yeah, lean in and give us some insights.
Well, my parents are fantastic, and they didn't intend to be parents. I think that's fair to say. My mum was 18 by 2 days when I was born. And my dad was 19, so they were teenage parents. And back in those days, it was like, right, shotgun wedding, and it wasn't quite that. They got married, they got together, and as you can imagine, childhood was a challenge for them because they didn't expect to be married. They had me, and then a couple of years later, my brother came along. So they were very young parents.
How did their parents react, Mark?
I think my dad's side were typically kind of matter of fact and stoic. My mum's side were a little bit more oh my goodness what's happened kind of thing. But they were both sets of grandparents were very supportive in those days from what I remember, and I remember spending a lot of time with my grandparents, because it was, late 60s, early 70s, and it was like, okay, we both got to have jobs. And so, mum would work the nights and dad would work the days. And so I think the biggest thing I learned from that was the whole thing of work ethic and, crack on. If you've got a responsibility, you've got to follow through on it, and you've got to do what it takes to make things happen. And so I think from an early age, I saw people getting on with it, no matter what the circumstances might have been, to make the best of what the situation kind of is. So I think that was a big thing. I think extended family was important because we had to rely on grandparents quite a lot. So the importance of not just being the nuclear family, but the people outside it was key. They had good friends, so they modelled friendship to us, and adventure as well. When I was around about 10, I think it was, we had family that had moved to South Africa in the 60s, and we at the time, I think probably they would say slightly naively, my parents decided they were going to emigrate to South Africa around about 1980, and because we had family out there and Dad had been offered a great opportunity to start work as a farmer, he'd kind of done whatever it took in the first 10 years to kind of make ends meet, and it was now he had a chance to train. And so he went out and trained as a dairy farmer, worked alongside one of my great uncles, which was a fantastic experience. And that was kind of like, well, we're prepared to up sticks and go and do something different in pursuit of something, whatever it might be. Now, as it turned out, it only lasted about 18 months, 2 years, because the regime at that point was pretty hideous. And
so the political at that time in the 80s. Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, it was during the time when Steve Biko was murdered. And those sorts of things were going on, and I think they moved out thinking that it would be okay, and then it became clear that it wasn't. But it gave us.
Did you all move out, Mark? Did you stay back here with grandparents, or did you?
We all went. We all went.
Oh, right.
So all four of us went, and it was an emigration. It wasn't we're going for a trip and see how it goes. It was up sticks, and so that was like, well, that taught me a lot about adventure, and I think. Both of them have always worked very hard. They've just retired in the last 18 months, which has been fantastic for them. But yeah, those key things, I think, work ethic, taking your responsibilities seriously, extended family, and a sense of adventure, I think, will be the main things I took from.
And they're quite young, aren't they, as parents? And in relation to you, it must be quite interesting in the fact of they're not far advanced in your years, really.
I suppose when you went to South Africa, they were sort of late 20s, and society now is of a ilk where people are kind of just starting their own families, late 20s, early 30s. It's things have shifted. I think back in your parents' day, people perhaps did have children a bit younger than they do today. But it's just interesting that you'll have people just starting their parenthood journey in their late 20s, early 30s. And by your experience, your parents have already got 2 children and have emigrated to South Africa. I had 2 years out there, and now it sounds like coming back to the UK, which is, like you say, it's an amazing adventure to have them so young.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they're very young, and we're getting closer in age as well, because as I get older, that kind of 17, 18 year gap.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
part of the same generation.
They're almost like an elder brother, isn't it? I remember my dad. There was something like 16 years between him and his youngest brother. So that's not dissimilar to you guys, really. And he said it was quite weird because people were like, "Oh, is this your dad?"
Yeah.
No, this is my son. This is my brother.
Yeah. We got out in the pub a lot once I turned 18, and we went to the pub together because he's only sort of mid-30s. So
yeah.
Brilliant. And then, sort of jumping forward, you then qualified and became a teacher, which I must admit doesn't hugely surprise me. You have a very thoughtful, considered style. My father was a teacher, so obviously growing up, I ended up coming into contact with lots of teachers, and not kind of through school, but just like the friends that he had. Lots of his friends were teachers, so it didn't surprise me when I read that you were a teacher. And what did you, as a teacher, what did you learn by way of transferable skills that kind of helped you as you move forward? Because teaching is not an easy job to do. No. So what were the things that you took from it that have helped you going forward?
I think my people skills have got much better over time. I don't think I was a particularly good people person. I was great with the kids. We had a lot of fun. That was all fine.
Were you secondary school or a secondary school teacher? Primary, right? Okay.
I started out in Hampshire back in those days, had middle schools. So they would
Okay.
up to year 7 in a junior school, and then you went to secondary at year 8. So I did 2 years of year 7 and 2 years of year 5.
Right.
And yeah, I think the main thing it makes you be is organized. It makes you organize your work in a way which is going to be manageable. It means you have to try and break ideas down into things which are, kind of digestible for people. So you've got to make it interesting. You've got to make it simple without simplifying it. And you've got to be able to communicate that and to sell that to people to get them to buy into an idea. So yeah, presentation, organization, interpersonal skills, I think. And then being able to teach, I think, the process of taking somebody through a process of learning, which isn't just about, well, here's the content, now off you go. It's okay, there's the content, let's talk about that and interact with it, and then let's put that into practice, because that's the learning journey. It's not what we traditionally think, which is right, I've been to a lecture on how to be a leader, now I'm a leader.
So I must be a leader, yeah.
There you go. It's like, no.
But so much of it's about delivery as well. I'm sure the teachers we all remember from our school days are those that had passion and energy. And it might have not been a subject we were that into, but we were drawn into it just because they had so much passion for what they were talking about. And in those environments, you can't help but learn because you just get sucked in with the emotion of it.
I love the phrase Mark just used, making it simple but not simplifying it. It's a lovely way, because that sort of says to people, it's a bit like listening and hearing, isn't it? It's that thing. I'm going to break it down for you, but I'm not going to simplify what it is. That's a nice phrase, actually. I like that one.
But then you obviously being contained within 4 walls of a classroom wasn't enough for you, and you wanted something that, I think you said you wanted something that enabled you to travel a bit more. So what direction did that take you in?
Yeah, so while I was teaching, I started to do some work in North Africa with a friend who had partnered up. His organisation had partnered up with, here's another acronym for you, Integrated Holistic Approach Urban Development Project, IHAUDP. Yeah, which is an absolutely fabulous project in the slums of Addis Ababa. And it's an integrated holistic approach to urban development. And so I did a couple of trips with him on the teacher side. So I did some teacher training. My wife came out with me on the second trip. She was originally trained as a nurse, so she did some work in nursing. So we did this sort of typical volunteer-y type thing where you use your skills overseas. And that was great. That kind of gave me the bug for that. I'd also at the time started working in music. And so was doing a lot of the weekends, and it became clear sort of towards the end of my 4th year in teaching that actually this direction I wanted to go in, which was the music stuff, the project stuff, that kind of thing. And teaching, although it was great and I enjoyed it, wasn't going to facilitate that because you need to travel whenever you needed to. And so it was like, okay, I've got an opportunity to step out of this. Let's do it and see what happens.
Brilliant. So how long did that process and venture last for you?
So that's when I became kind of like, I'll do whatever's next kind of thing. So having started out with a very traditional career, so I did the project management stuff for 3 or 4 years. I did music was a bit longer. They kind of overlapped and went alongside each other because you were getting paid. You were working part-time over here and part-time over here, and they kind of overlapped a bit. And then it was kind of towards the end of, gosh, where would this have been? Sort of late 90s, early 2000s. It was kind of like I was about to go full on into the music thing with doing production management for a national music,
wow. Okay.
Which was great, and it was all set up. Giving up my job, and then the funder pulled the money.
Oh, thanks.
So I learned to play golf badly. I bought a set of golf clubs from the tip, and went around the local golf course for a month because my wife was working at the time. She was at this point had risen to be like quite senior in the NHS, so that was great. I could just sit around and play golf.
House husband.
Basically,
how did your handicap improve? Did it get better?
Not at all. It stayed pretty rubbish all the way through. But it's good fun and a nice walk every now and then.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
But and then I kind of started. I picked up a job at Dentaid on their fundraising communications.
Right, okay.
A bit of that with the charities and the organisations I've worked with. And that was.
Do you think going back to your childhood? Do you think it was your parents and their sense of adventure that gave you almost the license and the permission to jump around a bit and try new things?
Yeah,
that's quite unusual. Look, for people of our age, it's quite traditional for people to get a job, have a career for perhaps 10 years, then possibly look to change. But you've done quite young. You've done quite a lot of jumping around, which is fairly unusual for somebody of your age.
Yeah, I think it was my parents, but also Jo, my wife. You know, she's very adventurous and spontaneous, and you know, she was like, right, we'll do this, we'll do that, and you know, we want to try this, and it's like you know, it's a little bit whiplashy at times because like, oh, what are we doing now? In fact, almost to the point where it's ridiculous. We've just celebrated our 7th year in the same house, and that's the longest by a long chalk.
Oh, right, okay.
So, and she's like getting twitchy and itchy feet, and I'm like, no, we're going to stay here for a while.
My wife's not like moving houses, but she moves all the furniture around. I say to the kids, you know, my entire life is I'd come home from the office and find out that you'd walk into your bedroom and find out your bed had moved to a different side, and she'd moved all the wardrobes around, and she's just constantly moving things around. Fortunately, not moving houses, but it's like it's not quite the sort of like roller coaster, but it's a bit like, what? Why is the sofa moved?
You're on your toes.
So you mentioned Dentaid, which kind of is our segue across into dentistry. But you say you got into dentistry through an accident involving a Ford Fiesta, a dentist, and a curry.
It's always like a joke, isn't it?
I was going to say there's so many questions. I think we should keep quiet and get you to explain this story.
Right. So round about 2002, a good friend of mine, Ian Wilson. We'd met in the same church, and they were the only people we could find to drink wine with on a Monday night. We didn't have kids, but they did. But they liked sitting outside and, you know, with a bottle of wine on a Monday night. So we became good friends, and he subsequently had started Bridge to Aid and moved out to Tanzania. On the first summer that he was back, he asked me to. He didn't have a car because he'd moved overseas. He said, if you drive me to do this presentation I'm doing for Dentaid, I'll buy you a curry. And so I never once turned down a curry. I said, that sounds really good. Excellent. Let's do it. So we jumped in my wife's Ford Fiesta.
Excellent.
And drove over to Dentaid, which is about an hour from where we were living at the time. And he did this talk, and it was part of Dentaid's 10th anniversary celebration at the time. And they were bringing different people in to do stuff. And that presentation, the presentation that he did about what he was doing, but also what I learned at Dentaid about oral health in developing countries, kind of really brought me up short. And it was like, flipping heck, this is a real problem that nobody's thinking about. And I guess because I'd always been somebody that tried to make things better, or particularly cheer on the underdog, or fight for the causes which weren't the most prevalent ones. I was like, okay, well, I've just lost my job, or I've just lost the contract I thought I was going to have. I'm not doing anything else. They need somebody to come in and help with fundraising, so I'll go and do that. And so I went and worked with Dentaid. The first thing I did was got told I was going on a plane to China to walk the Great Wall with about 2 weeks' notice, which was interesting. Yeah, because at the time it was because Luke, who was the chief executive at the time, his wife Jenny, who's a dentist and was working alongside us, she just discovered she was pregnant, and he was like, "I'm not going. I'm not going to China. My wife's just become pregnant, so I'm going to stay around. So you get to go on this trip." So I did Great Wall of China, which was great fun, and then came back. And subsequently after that, we started working in partnership with Ian on the whole volunteer program thing, which is what eventually took us to Tanzania. So
wow.
So it was more. It was an incident. But it was an accident, but it didn't involve any crumple zones or anything like that.
It's quite funny. I think I met Ian with dentists and a curry, but no Ford Fiesta in Leeds. I can remember him telling me the stats for Tanzania, and it was like, flip. You just, that sort of, I can't remember what it is now, but it was something like, for every million patients or something, there's like one dentist or something. And he said, people travel. It was mind blowing, really, because you sort of don't think about it.
I've only met Ian a couple of times, but you know when he's in the room, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's loud and there's presence.
So he's got quite a loud voice.
But not just a loud voice. He's got a presence, doesn't he? You know when he's in the room.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
And I think you need people like that doing the work that he was doing. You need people with that sort of energy. But what a great introduction to dentistry for you, the Great Wall of China.
Was that 2 weeks in? That's not bad, is it? Or whatever it was. You're off. Thank you.
Great fun.
So hearing your story so far, it isn't that surprising that you now have a business that brings on leaders, is very focused around purpose and building purpose-driven businesses. And by purpose, we've got you down. There's environmental, social and governance, which is the ESG bit, and then there's also corporate social responsibility, the CSR.
I love strategy. A TLA.
Exactly. What does that mean to you? What does that actually look like? Because I guess this is partly been built out of your own experience in Addis Ababa, working with Bridge to Aid, listening to Dentaid. But what does it look like to you?
I think when you go back to the sort of origins of business, and they're always about solving a problem. It wasn't necessarily about always the profit motive, although that was was definitely part of it. But you look at the history of really good companies. You go back to the beginning of John Lewis Partnership, Cadbury, those sorts of companies. They had a holistic approach to business, which was that everybody has to benefit from it. And then along came Milton Friedman and kind of shareholder capitalism and all these sorts of things. And what happened suddenly was, okay, well, people are just they're one of the resources that we use in order to generate a profit, and it doesn't really matter, we will upsize or downsize depending on what it is that we need in order to maintain margins or to keep shareholders happy. And I think what's happened, particularly in recent years, is that people have started to buck that. They've started to see that the excesses of shareholder capitalism have had a huge cost, not just in terms of the human fallout when people are laid off, that because of a short-term need, the environmental costs, people like BP cutting corners, and then spilling millions of gallons of oil into the coast of Texas.
Yeah,
and I think all that stuff means that businesses are starting to go, hang on a minute, surely businesses should be for good, shouldn't they? They should be, yes, they need to make a profit, but actually should that be at the expense of the environment and their stakeholders? And you combine that with the fact that people are now going, actually, I don't want to go, like you were saying, Chris, about you start a career and off you go. It's like, no, I want to, when I go to work, I want to know that I'm making a difference, that the workplace gives a crap about the environment and the people that work for it. And I need a sense of purpose in that, what is it that we exist to do? Now, with dentistry, it's not to fix teeth. It's much more than that. It's about the impact impact that you make on the patient, whether that's from a point of view or a confidence point of view or a well-being point of view or a general health point of view, but there's an impact that you make as a business on a day-to-day basis, which you need to plug people into, because that's where the sweet spot is. And this is why people have fallen down with the recruitment crisis, because they've gone to an extra 50p an hour or or an M&S voucher at Christmas. It's like those extrinsic things don't hit it anymore. You've got to go intrinsic, which is sense of purpose. So a purpose-driven business for me is one that has clearly identified what difference it makes in the world, and then it is using that purpose as a means to make commitments to looking after the environment, caring for its people, and making a difference in the community.
You can see how it's way more than just kind of people quite often have vision statements or business plans, and they write them, they put them in a drawer, they shut the drawer, the drawer never opens again. And what you've described there is it has to be core to the business. People in there have to believe it and live it, and it almost drives everything they do, as opposed to one of these things that you kind of just tick a box and say that it's done. So
it's hard though, isn't it? Because you have to keep reinforcing it, to say to people that this is the reason we do stuff. We have our part of our vision written on our wall, and it's people sort of look at it and you sort of say, well, we actually, because it's Frank Taylor's, we value and sell dental practices, but actually you do change people's lives, but you quite often forget about that bit because the team just do their job, which is, that's their job, and it's trying to get them to say, no, there's more to it. There's more to it than that.
What's the resistance to it, Mark? Is there a perception that this is going to cost me more money? It's going to be a more expensive way of doing business if I start incorporating ESG or CSR.
Or is it a bit wacky?
Yeah.
A bit sort of like all touchy-feely.
Yeah, what are the resistance points to people not grabbing this? Because logically, it makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't you do it? But there must be resistance points, because I don't think as many businesses grab hold of this, perhaps to the extent they should.
Yeah, I think the two big things are well, there's three actually. The first one is time. Is this going to take loads of time to do, because we've already got enough to do? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The next one is cost. So is this going to cost us more money? And the third one I've forgotten. But those
two's good. Two's great.
I thought, who needs three? Who needs three?
It will come back to me.
But what's really good, that demonstrates that we're getting there, because there obviously used to be three, and now there's only two.
And that's I was going to think you've forgotten age. I do wonder whether older business owners would be a bit more resistant. It's interesting. I wonder whether they're sort of like, sort of this namby-pamby,
I think that's probably just a change thing generally. I think as you get older,
it's interesting.
I think you're less willing to take on change.
Oh, you remember the third one?
Yeah, the third one is understanding what it is, because you've got. Is it going to cost me more money? I haven't got time to do it, but I don't really understand what it is. And I think the big thing is that when you talk to people and you say, look, 90% of this you're doing already. It's just it's not about doing loads of extra stuff. It's about changing the way that you do what you do, because you are looking after your team. You are managing your waste. You are, you're choosing where to procure. The community side of things is probably the area where if you're not doing it, then that isn't something else to add on. But they don't understand that. But they also don't understand the value that it adds, and the trend of what people are looking for when they're looking at business, because it's becoming more and more of a fundamental.
And I think that's a key point, because brutally, as shareholders, stakeholders, people very quickly focus on the bottom line. And if there's a tangible business reason to get on board with it, that will resonate with certain people. What does it practically look like in a dental practice, where a dental practice has a really good strategy in place? What do those practices look and feel like?
So they've identified their purpose to start with, and they've boiled it down into some messages which they repeat on a regular basis. So they're weaving it into their huddles. So it always starts with purpose and why are we doing this? So they've gone through a process where they've identified that as owners, and then they've talked to the team about it and said, look, this is what we do. This is what we believe. And so on the basis of those things and those values that we have, these are the things we're committing to in terms of CSR. what they've then done is they've done an analysis of, okay, well, this is the gold standard and this is where we are now. Where are we going to start? And they've put in place a plan to take them to reaching that standard over a period of time. They've got somebody in charge of it. So they've appointed somebody who is responsible for managing the plan and putting the plan into place. They've engaged the team in the process, and the team are enjoying, taking part in events, doing things, whether that's in practice or supporting initiatives that are going on. So it's become part of their day to day. And they've also celebrated it in a way where they've either got a certification or they're using it in their social media, but they're using it in an authentic way, which means that people can draw the line between, okay, that's who they say they are, that's what they're committed to, and that's what they're doing about it. Because what people usually do is they go to the last thing. They say, oh, we're going to do this fundraiser for such and such. And people go, that's nice. But it can be that if it's a one-off and there's no other evidence around it of commitment, then that can often fall flat on its face. So they've been through a process basically to say, we're going to do this. We know where we are. We know we want to get to. And then each of the three strands with our people, which includes patients. So there's ethics around patients, how we treat the team, how we look after the team, what we do for the team, the environments. They've got a plan for sustainability, and they've got a plan to engage with their community. And what you typically see in those kind of practices is that it really boosts morale, because when you lift the lid and you say, we're going to do this, most people under 40 will go, fantastic, this is brilliant, this is, finally, because they're the ones that are pushing the door. Millennial generation and Generation Z, those are the values-based generations which are pushing for this kind of stuff, because they know that individual action isn't enough. We've got to see businesses take action as well.
Is there a challenge in there that lots of business owners are the other side of the age line? Because I get it's not necessarily a top down or a bottom up thing. The whole business needs to engage in it. But where lots of business have slightly older principals, business owners, is there sometimes resistance? Going back to that thing about change, is it something that's perhaps needed in businesses but not necessarily being adopted at the top end?
Yeah, I think from my experience, because we're still very much at the kind of early adopters into that first part of the bell curve, it's not such much of a thing because people know that they should. So they've either got teenagers or teenage kids, or they're being exposed to younger people. I think as time goes on, the change thing will become a deal. But the interesting thing is that both consumer pressure and regulatory pressure is going to be brought to bear, particularly on sustainability, because there's no way that government targets can be met around, carbon reduction, sustainability, without using the tools that levers that they've got in the healthcare system. You've seen this in the NHS already. So tendering, procurement, commissioning have all got CSR aspects to them. And I get approached by companies, suppliers quite often, who say, we want to bid on this thing, but we've got no strategy for it. So they see the commercial side of it. So that's the thing. But I think resistance to change isn't so much because for me, the people that come to me tend to know that they need what they need. I expect that will change when CQC starts to add some more questions into the inspection.
And just on that, what is it that you can do for dentists and dental practices? What are the services that you offer? You can obviously help them design a strategy, but there's more to it than that.
Yeah, so there's a number of options. So there's the entry level option is, I've got free guides on my website. So my specific website for responsibility in dentistry is called responsibledentistry.com. And on there's the free resource. There's if you want to do a lunch and learn to get your team on board, then there's something called Sustainable Smiles, which is an hour of interactive video to take them through. One up from that is a short video course called Sustainability in 60 Minutes, which walks you through with all the templates of how you put the plan together. And then the next one is what I call the Responsible Dentistry Academy, which is a year-long done-for-you service. So I will come in, work with you, with your team, get your team engaged, and then handhold you through the process and support you for the rest of the year to make sure things get embedded. So depending on your interest level and your price point, there's different resources available.
I'll tell you what would be really useful, Mark. If you could give us those, if you could email me over those links, we'll stick them in the show notes.
Yeah,
because it sounds like you say, you've got an offering for everybody. They can either kind of do it as a DIY project or get you in and you can do the whole kit and caboodle. You also work outside of dentistry, don't you? You don't just work inside dentistry. How does dentistry
for your
compare?
own sanity?
Yeah, but how does dentistry compare to other sectors and professions in terms of where it's at? Is it leading the way? Is it a trailer? How does it sit?
I wouldn't say it's leading the way. I think it's different depending on what part of dentistry you work in. So independents, there are the work with them is driven by principals who understand that this is something they need to do. They buy into it because they've read Simon Sinek, or they understand some of the stuff around the Gary Vaynerchuk covers and those sorts of things. So they understand about purpose and about doing the right thing. DSOs, corporates, they are willing, and it's also tied to funding nowadays, which is interesting. So I know that there are discounts for lenders if you've got a sustainability strategy in place.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge pool of ESG money floating around that knows where to put. So they're more keen. The trouble with DSOs is that they are, and I'm not sure where we're at with this at the moment, but they're so busy acquiring that whether they can, the bandwidth to focus on ESG is less. And so the DSOs that I work with, that's the same for all of them. They're willing, there's a strategy in place, but how fast we can go is dictated by external forces. But I think they understand, particularly the sustainability side, they understand it, but from a funding point of view. So I think those are the things. What I would say, the main difference between dentistry and the other sectors I work in is that they're probably 5 or 10 years ahead in terms of understanding it as a core business principle. And so there's less persuasion and less messing around to do, because it's like, no, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it in a nice and structured way. But I think part of that is down to the fact that there's no real catalyst for it within dentistry, and where it could come from the DSOs, their eyes are on different balls, and either buying or selling or getting ready to flip.
And are we moving into a phase
motivations, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. And are we moving into a phase where it's almost becoming a non-negotiable? But whereas for a period it was like, oh, it'd be a nice thing to do, it feels like we're in a phase where actually it is really important. We do need it. Are we at the tipping point where soon it's just going to be, you just won't have a modern, business with the right culture if you do not have these as core to how you behave?
Yeah, I think we're already there, to be honest. I mean, you read Larry Fink's letters, so the president of BlackRock, one of the biggest investors on the planet, and the last 3-4 years, one of the main topics of his letter to people they invest in has been about sustainability and responsibility. So it's gone from being a nice to have to a good thing, to now being actually one of the major risk factors that you've got to look at if you've got a significant business, because your social license to operate, your ability to recruit and retain good people, and protecting yourself against the ramifications of climate change have become sort of major things. So that's on the sort of macro scale. And then I think on the sort of on the high street where dentistry kind of primarily sits, I think people are, the stats say it's 88 to 96% of people look for good CSR in a business when they're shopping around. Now that's very subtle, and people are prepared to pay more for services which are sustainable, which where there's a responsibility. But you've only got to look at how the major brands are trying to showcase their credentials. to see that actually this isn't just they're not doing that for the benefit of their health. Put it that way.
No.
No,
And the
that's right,
media,
yeah,
the
yeah.
media are getting quicker at calling out big businesses where they're perhaps, purchasing materials or using factories that don't have great standards. The media are very quick to call those people out, and they then have to go into kind of a repair mode. So actually, it would make much more sense just to have a well-led business.
Well, my wife will only, she's got some, I don't know, wherever it goes to, some website where she'll look at clothes shops and people that produce clothes shops to see what their rating is as to, where their clothes are produced and stuff like that. And if it's not, unfortunately, a lot of the, or not unfortunately, that's probably good for me actually, but a lot of the top brands are not necessarily the best when it comes to where their clothes are made and their circumstances. So she's very driven by the CSR and what actually is happening to those people. I think more and more people are, aren't they? They're looking at it and saying, well, I'm not going to buy it from someone who, puts someone and pays them 10p or something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's important.
Because actually you can affect that, can't you? It's an interesting one, really. Like climate change, we can all go electric and don't use our gas boilers and all that sort of stuff. But you somehow sort of feel almost that's potentially a big drop in the ocean. But somehow if you can stop spending money on something that it's your way of contributing to it. I think it is an interesting
But
change.
also in terms of shareholder value, if you've got people who, you're saying it's very high 80% into the 90% where people either consciously or subconsciously consider the CSR element when making purchases. If that happens and you don't have a positive strategy, that is going to impact shareholder value. So it's going to get driven through because ultimately people that invest in businesses, they do it for a financial return and they want to do it in the most ethical way possible, but they do it for a financial return. And if that financial return is being impacted by not having a positive strategy, then it gets kind of pushed and pulled in lots of different directions, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like our time pledge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, you've done a shed load of stuff. What would you take as your biggest learning from your entrepreneurial journey? What's the biggest thing you've learned from it? Because you've had quite a varied career, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm glad you said varied. Some would call it checkered. What have I
Be hard on yourself.
what have I learned? I think what I've learned along the way is that you don't have to do the same job in order to fulfill your mission, purpose, what makes you tick in life. That there are loads of different ways to do that. And I've been very fortunate in that, I had the outlook and the support and the partner to pursue that and to try things out. I think, I don't think that fear should ever be a factor in decision making, because if you make decisions based on fear, that closes you down. As scary as it be, it's always much better to make decisions based on your values, what's important to you, and who you are as a person, rather than, I need to pay the mortgage or I need to do that. And that's not to say we can be irresponsible. Sometimes you have to take a punt and do it. I was out for a beer with a friend of mine last night who's he's actually a presenter on BBC Radio, nothing to do with
Not there.
I like the quick follow up.
Yeah. Disclaimer.
Yeah, but he was saying, I don't know how you do it, because obviously he's in a salaried position, and he'd like to do some stuff outside, but he's like, it's really hard. How do you sleep at night? And it's like, well, the alternative is that if you're not doing what you want to do, and that's not to say employment's a bad thing, but if you're not doing what you want to do and what's important to you, then you live that life of quiet desperation where you're almost waiting for the weekend and for retirement. Whereas actually my mission, my whole passion is about, helping people to build places where people love to come to work because they get that purpose. It's just about a paycheck. And that means you have to take some chances.
What's great about that, Mark, is you may be aware of the Australian palliative care nurse Bronnie Ware, who's written the book about the regrets of the dying. And what you've said is exactly that, which is kind of do what you want to do, and don't be scared to live the life you want to live, because then when we get to old age, you won't have the regrets of not doing the things you thought you could have done. You've actually done it, and success is never guaranteed either way, but at least you did what you wanted to do.
It's easy to say though, isn't it? It's getting, we all suffer from that. That little voice.
I think something that you had, which is different for lots of people, is you had an upbringing that gave you a sense of adventure and freedom to do that. I think lots of people get pigeonholed quite young into getting a job, earning some money. You end up with expenses that broadly match your earnings, so it doesn't give you that freedom to go and move sideways and try something different. But I think that kind of upbringing for you, it almost built into your case of, well, what's the worst that can happen? And that gave you some freedom to try some different things. This isn't pointed at you, because we all have them, but what are your failures that you cherish the most? What are the things that have gone hopelessly wrong that you go, that was a fabulous lesson?
Oh gosh, failures. I mean, obviously the funder pulling the
music bit
from the musical was a big one, and actually it opened the door to the next chapter, which was fantastic. And I think life does that. Failures. I think there's been many, whether it's new products or stuff that I thought would work and didn't. Back when I was with Bridge
we know that feeling, don't we?
Yeah.
You do fundraising initiatives which you think this is going to really work, and they don't. And I think the more you get, and it's almost like you've got to get punch drunk before you kind of realize it. But the more you get hammered, the more you realize that actually the quicker you can go through that process of either getting angry or upset or drunk or whatever, the place where you go, right, so what's next?
Fail fast.
The better, because it's like it's history, and the longer you dwell on it, and that's why to mind's quite difficult, because it's like, well, okay, next.
It reminds me a bit of Ed Sheeran, that somebody said to Ed Sheeran, how is it you write such incredible, memorable songs? He says, you write 100 crap songs. He says, you won't start writing great songs. And it's a bit like what you said, that you just have to keep trying things, accepting that failure is okay, because you'll learn things from that, and it will make you better, so that you can then make a better decision or a better product or a better service or a better whatever. And the likelihood of just landing on that golden idea without any failure before, it's like Edison and the light bulb, isn't it? It's unlikely.
What was it? Starbucks 180 something declines. I even read today that there's some bloke, he set up Nutmeg. Is it Nutmeg? I don't know, some IT thing. He's just died from cancer, but he set up a bone cancer in Namers, and it's now, he sold it to someone for £700 million, but he got rejected something like 44 times before he even got it going.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. It's like relentless.
And I think that's part of, I think we need to be careful. And I think the reason why, people under 40 struggle more with this is because, like, my youngest is just about to finish primary school, and the motto of his school is dream, believe, achieve. And I'm always really naffed off with that, because it's like it's missing a stage. It's like, dream, believe, fail, achieve. It's like, because we do people a disservice when we give them the idea that actually there's this route and you take it. And it's like, no, there's a whole lot of crap and mistakes.
It almost should have do something, shouldn't it? Before you've got actually you got to do something. You just because I believe doesn't necessarily mean I always want to be a rock star. But it's never going to happen.
That's where you build your resilience, isn't it? If you just try things, everything goes well, you're never going to have any resilience. So in your life, when you face a challenge, you're not going to know how to cope with it. And I think for kids, the sooner they get that in their armory, the better. Which is why, school sports days, everybody wins, everybody gets a medal. Okay, it's lovely. But the brutal reality is the way that sport is configured.
How it happens now still?
Yeah. So the way sport's configured, you have winners and losers. It's just the way sport is designed. That's it. And it can be done in a very soft and caring way. But I think getting kids to understand that life isn't always about you will win isn't a bad thing to learn, because, grown-ups, they're just big kids. We all start out as kids. We're just big ones. So the sooner you can teach the young kids what it's like to be a big one,
failure's okay.
Yeah, in a caring way,
accept it and move on.
Isn't a bad thing. You've mentioned a couple of times, Mark, about your
deep here.
It is. You sort of dallianced around your close shave with the music industry, and obviously that production thing got pulled because of the funding. But you did do backing vocals on a top 10 single, didn't you, back in the day?
Right, hang on.
I'm sure you're hoping we were going to gloss over this.
I'm going to have to get a YouTube clip up.
So give us the story on that.
So one of the bands that I worked with was actually the way I got involved. This is how music works a lot of the time. So my wife Jo, she trained as a nurse with a girl called Sarah. Sarah's married to Stuart. Stuart is the drummer in this band, and so I start helping him out on the weekends when they're like playing, diddy little gigs here and there. Right. Anyway, they go the distance, and they're recording their album, and they said, "Oh, come over for dinner. We'll take you out." So we arrive at this place that we're supposed to be, to meet them to go out for dinner, and they're in the process of recording the album. And in the process of recording the album, the producer says, "Oh, we need some BVs on this one." So, and it was
his name? Stuart, was it?
Stuart
Copeland.
No, not Stuart.
I must admit, I jumped to
in my head. I'm
thinking, yeah, it's on a police.
I thought for a minute there was going to be a sting in the tail to this story.
So basically, we arrive and they're there, and we're asked to sing BVs on the chorus of this song. So
brilliant.
That was pretty much it. The song was called Deeper. It's by a band called Delirious, and it was round about.
I know Delirious. I know Delirious. Yeah. One of my friends used to play guitar with him.
Oh, really? Which one?
Yeah. That would have been. What's his name? Steve. Can't remember his surname. His brother used to be the drummer, I think, for. It might have been a later version. Paul Evans, I think.
Oh yeah, Paul Evans. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul replaced Stuart when Stuart left the band.
Right.
Really?
Right. Yeah. Steve Evans. Yeah, he did some work. I think he might have done Did they just do a recent tour or something of? Because I think one of my other friends went and played keyboards for him. I think they might have done something in Amsterdam recently.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I got one of their albums. I wonder if it's on it. I think it might be actually.
Well, there we go. Look at that.
Yeah, flip. The album I've got is in a little tin.
Yeah, no, that's before this album. So that was Live and in the Can, which was a live.
Right. But I know Deeper. I do know that one. Yeah, right.
Well, there we go. So when we finish, we're going to get it up on YouTube.
It's really good, actually. It's a good band, actually. They made some great songs. History Maker, I think, was one.
They did. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, we're having
what a very cool story.
Moment here.
What a very cool story. Mark, we always like to finish up in the same way with our guests, and the first question we have for you of two is: if you could be a fly on a wall in a certain situation, when would that be, and who would be there?
So I had a little think about this, and there's loads of different moments in there. I mean, I've always been somebody that's admired people that can overcome adversity. And so I don't know if you guys remember 2019, England were playing Scotland at Twickenham in the Calcutta Cup. And in the first half, England went 31 points ahead.
Yeah.
And I think the Scots scored a try just before half time, but basically they went in like 25 points down, and everybody was like, that's it, it's all over. And Gregor Townsend, who was the coach at the time, gave a team talk. Now, I can't remember the three things that he got them to do, but he basically said, forget everything else. I want you to do these three things. and it was all stuff they could control. So I think it was like hardest into the tackle, first the breakdown, and look out for each other. And those were the three things that he said. And of course, anybody that knows the story knows that they came out and scored 4 unanswered tries, went 7 points ahead with a couple of minutes to go, and then England scored to make it 38-38. And I think I would have loved to have been on the wall when he gave the team talk, and then when they came back in afterwards, because it's a great lesson for people that it doesn't matter what the score is. If you focus on the basics and keep going, then you'll get a result. And that's all you. Or the thing he asked them to do is do that, and then you can be proud, because you had no idea that they were going to score that many points. But so yeah, I would like to have been on the.
Oh, that would be fabulous. And also, it's that thing you focus on the things you can control. You can't control what the other team do, but you can look after yourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant.
Probably mentioned Braveheart or Bannockburn.
Yeah. And if you could meet somebody, Mark, if you were given the opportunity to sit down with a pint of beer, glass of wine, cup of coffee, who would you like to meet?
There's loads, too many. Who do people choose? They choose sports people or politicians, or
it's massively varied.
Yeah, we've had some people that have gone very personal.
No one's gone for a fictitious person.
No.
Everyone's gone for real people. Because we said, you could be like, you might want to meet James Bond or something, but everyone's gone for a real person.
Yeah, we've had some people that have dipped into kind of family history for whatever reason, but lots of them are fairly high-profile people.
There's some that are a bit off the mark, and we're like, okay, never even thought about that person. So it's a white. So it'll be great.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna be naughty and have 2.
Okay.
So Bill McDermott was he was the president and CEO of SAP. He's now got his own business. He wrote a really good book called Winner's Dream, which I read back when I was just first starting out as a leader. And he's well worth a look up, because just a very interesting backstory, upbringing, some of the influences that were on his life were really interesting. He's still alive. And the other one would be Ben Stokes, I think. I want to sit down with Ben, because he comes across as just a very normal guy. And he's had various struggles with adversity, with his mental health and all that sort of stuff. I just love to share a beer and get some time with him. So yeah, Bill and Ben, there you go.
That's what it might stand out after a few beers. No, it's been brilliant. Like I say, thank you very much indeed for your time. I think the way you approach it feels like there's huge congruence between who you are and what you do. It flows through your career, how you approach things, and there's a real deep passion on your side to try and make businesses, but society better through the stuff that you know.
And we said it'd be more than 22 minutes, and that's right.
Exactly. Look at that.
Excellent. Been really good. Really good. Really enjoyable.
You made it. Yeah. No, lovely. Appreciate your time today, Mark.
No,
thanks very much.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.